In the grand tapestry of human conflict, history books record the wars fought on battlefields, the rise and fall of empires, and the clash of ideologies. However, the most devastating war, the one that claims the most potential, destroys the most happiness, and ruins the most lives, is never fought with gunpowder or steel. It is the silent, invisible war fought within the confines of the human skull. It is the war between the true self, who you are capable of becoming, and human weakness, the gravitational pull toward mediocrity, comfort, and vice. To say your weakness is your enemy is not merely a poetic metaphor, it is a literal psychological and philosophical truth. An external enemy can only harm your body or your property. An internal enemy, your own weakness, can dismantle your character, distort your reality, and poison your soul. This treatise explores the multi-dimensional nature of this internal adversary. We will dissect it through the lens of ancient philosophy, from the Stoics to the existentialists, and analyze it through modern psychology, from the psychoanalytic depths of the shadow to the behavioral science of self-sabotage. Part 1. The philosophical dimension. 1. The Stoic perspective. The fortress and the trait of the Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, viewed the human condition as a struggle for hegemonic on the ruling faculty of the mind. To a Stoic, the only true evil is moral weakness, often described as vice. For the Stoic, the external world is indifferent. A storm, a tyrant, or a disease cannot make you a bad person. They can only harm the vessel you inhabit. However, your reaction to these things reveals your strength or your weakness. The concept of akrasia, the Greeks identified a specific type of weakness called akrasia, often translated as weakness of will. It is the state of acting against one's better judgment. You know you should exercise, but you sit. You know you should remain calm, but you explode in anger. You know you should work, but you procrastinate. In this context, your weakness is your enemy because it enslaves you. Seneca argued that he who is a slave to his body is not free. If your mood is dictated by the weather, your self-esteem by the compliments of others, and your actions by your physical appetites, you are not the general of your own life. You are a prisoner. The weakness is the jailer. 2. Friedrich Nietzsche and the last man moving to the 19th century. Friedrich Nietzsche presented a terrifying vision of what happens when human weakness wins. He introduced the concept of the last man, the antithesis of the Bermensch Overman. The last man is the embodiment of apathy and comfort. He blinks and says, "We have invented happiness," while seeking nothing more than warmth, safety, and a full belly. Nietzsche argued that this weakness, the desire for a life without struggle, is the ultimate enemy of human greatness. Resentment as a weapon of the weak. Nietzsche also identified resentment as the primary psychological defense of the weak. When an individual is too weak to achieve what they desire, they do not strive to become stronger. Instead, they villainize the strong. They declare that power, wealth, and beauty are evil to make themselves feel morally superior for lacking them. Here, weakness is not just a passive failing. It is an active, venomous enemy that distorts reality to protect a fragile ego. 3. Existentialism and bad faith. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, framed weakness as a denial of freedom, a concept he called bad faith, mauvaise foi. Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free. We are responsible for every choice we make. This responsibility is terrifying. Weakness, therefore, manifests as the refusal to accept this burden, the narrative of victimhood. The enemy within tells you, "I couldn't help it, I was born this way," or "society made me do it," the surrender of agency. By adopting the role of a victim object, you escape the anxiety of choice, but you also kill your potential. In existentialism, the enemy is the part of you that wants to be a thing rather than a person, a rock that is moved by gravity rather than a human moved by will. Part 2. The psychological architecture. 1. The shadow self. Carl Jung. Perhaps the most profound psychological articulation of the internal enemy is Carl Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow consists of all the parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, or hide because they are socially unacceptable or painful to acknowledge. This includes our aggression, our sexual taboos, our insecurities, and our selfishness. Why the shadow becomes the enemy. Jung famously stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you ignore your weaknesses, your shadow, they do not disappear. They retreat into the unconscious and operate autonomously. Projection. A person who represses their own dishonesty will become paranoid that everyone else is lying to them. Eruption. A person who represses their anger to appear nice. A weakness of assertiveness will eventually snap in a violent rage. The shadow is the enemy. Only as long as it is rejected, it operates as a saboteur behind enemy lines. The psychological task is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it, to recognize the capacity for malevolence within so that it can be controlled. 2. The ID and the pleasure principle. Sigmund Freud divided the psyche into the ID ego and superego. The ID operates on the pleasure principle. It wants immediate gratification, regardless of the consequences. This is the biological root of weakness. It is the part of the brain that screams for sugar, for sleep, for aggression, and for sex. It is evolutionarily ancient. Your weakness is your enemy because it is literally an outdated operating system fighting against the reality principle, the ego, which understands long-term consequences. The death drive. Thanatos. Freud later introduced the controversial concept of Thanatos, the death drive. He suggested that alongside the drive to live and create, there is a subconscious drive to return to nothingness, to a state of calm, non-existence, and self-destruction. This explains the psychology of addiction and extreme procrastination. Why do we do things that we know will destroy us? Because a part of the human psyche craves the cessation of struggle. That craving is the enemy.
Part 3. The faces of the enemy. The enemy is a shifter. It rarely introduces itself as weakness. It wears masks that look like safety, logic, or even virtue. 1. Fear disguised as prudence. Fear is the primary manifestation of weakness. However, it often masquerades as wisdom. The internal voice says, "Don't start that business. The economy is bad," or "Don't ask that person out. You don't want to ruin the friendship." This is the enemy paralyzing you under the guise of protection. It creates a safety paradox. By trying to stay safe from rejection or failure, you ensure the certainty of stagnation, which is the ultimate failure. 2. Arrogance disguised as confidence. Arrogance is a profound weakness. It is the refusal to learn. The arrogant mind believes it is already full. Therefore, it cannot grow. In Greek tragedy, hubris, excessive pride, is the fatal flaw that destroys the hero. Psychologically, arrogance is a defense mechanism used to cover deep insecurity. The enemy puffs up the chest to hide the trembling heart. 3. Apathy disguised as contentment. There is a fine line between stoic contentment and lazy apathy. Contentment, I have enough, but I will continue to grow and serve. Apathy, it doesn't matter, nothing changes, why bother? Apathy is the enemy causing a slow spiritual death. It is the atrophy of the will. It is dangerous because it feels painless. It is a warm bath that slowly puts you to sleep while your house burns down. 4. Victimhood disguised as justice. As touched upon with Nietzsche, the adoption of the victim identity is a seductive weakness. It provides an immediate moral high ground without requiring any effort. It allows one to blame the other parents, government, ex-partners for the state of one's life. While victimization is real, remaining a victim is a choice of the weak. The enemy within loves victimhood because it absolves the self of the need to take action. Part 4. The mechanics of self-sabotage. Why do we act as our own worst enemies? When you exceed your internal setting, when things are going too well, the enemy kicks in. You subconsciously feel you don't deserve this. So, you pick a fight with your spouse, you get sick, or you forget a deadline. You sabotage yourself to drop back down to your familiar zone of unhappiness. 2. Neuroplasticity and the path of least resistance. Neurologically, the brain is an energy-conserving organ. It prefers known habits, neural highways, over new behaviors, blazing a trail through the jungle. Weakness is often just biology taking the path of least resistance. To change is to consume energy. To remain the same is efficient. The enemy is the biological imperative to conserve calories, which translates in the modern world to laziness and stagnation. Part 5. Strategy: defeating the internal enemy. If your weakness is your enemy, how do you fight a war against yourself without destroying yourself? 1. Radical awareness. The watchman. The first step is metacognition, thinking about your thinking. You must establish a watchman in your mind. This is the consciousness that observes the weakness without engaging with it. Instead of, I have to do this hard work which triggers resistance. Reframe. I choose to build my future today. This utilizes the implementation intention technique. You create logical traps for your weakness. If I feel the urge to check my phone, I will drink a glass of water first. 3. Voluntary hardship, the soldier. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, sleeping on the floor, fasting not to punish themselves, but to inoculate themselves against the fear of want. Four. Integration of the shadow, the alchemist. You must stop hating your weakness. Hatred is a form of attachment. If your weakness is aggression, do not suppress it. Channel it into competitive sports or ambitious business goals. If your weakness is a need for validation, channel it into public speaking or leadership where that drive serves the group. This is the alchemical process of transmutation, turning the lead of your character flaws into the gold of your virtues. Conclusion. The infinite game, the realization that your weakness is your enemy, is not a sentence to despair. It is a call to arms. It liberates you from looking for enemies outside yourself. It puts the keys to the castle firmly in your own hands. If the enemy were external, if it were the economy, the government, or bad luck, you would be helpless. But because the enemy is internal, you possess the power to defeat it. The battle against one's own weakness is not a single event. It is what James Carse would call an infinite game. You do not win once and retire. You wake up every morning, and the enemy wakes up with you. The weakness will always be there, whispering that it is okay to sleep in, okay to quit, okay to settle. The philosophy of the strong is the understanding that the victory lies not in the elimination of the weakness, but in the constant, disciplined, and courageous triumph over it, day after day, until the very end. This is the only war that truly matters, for the spoils of this war are self-mastery, freedom, and a life truly lived.